Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of the anime movie Mirai on Netflix. And I didn't really enjoy this one. Now, granted, I do not think it's a bad movie. I just did not like the characters. I was just like, sweet good God. I didn't like them. I got bored throughout what was going on, and the explanation of what was kind of going on didn't really pop up until like the last 14 minutes or so of the film. And I'm just like, alright, cool. So, we start off and we see this little kid pretty much waiting for his parents to get home, pretty much being taken care of with his grandmother. And grandmother's trying to get him to pick up all the stuff, but he keeps doing his own thing because he's a little kid, about like 4 years old or whatnot. He's a really small dude. Like, try to figure out what's going on. Like, the main problem becomes this kid is a 4-year-old kid. It's a child. The job description of a child is to try and figure out how to be a person. Most of these people don't even try and go to like explain to any length really kind of what's going on. They just mainly bark orders at the kid, and that's about it. Not completely barking orders, but it's just they don't really explain to him why he shouldn't do these kinds of things. Now, granted, they have issues that they're dealing with as well, but it's kind of like, yeah, he's kind of being a dick, but he's at that age where he doesn't know what to really do or how to handle this kind of thing. You gotta kind of help the kid. So we see that he really likes his mom and dad, but he's really been wanting his mom, and they come back home with a new baby. Got a birthmark on her hand and everything because that's an important identifying feature. And he really is just like, oh, okay, cool. Trying to figure out what to name her. They just name her Mirai at some point in the film. It's just like, because he pretty much tries to name her all these different kind of train names. And I'm like, okay, cool, the kid's into trains. Of course that's what he would kind of go for. But we see that the family dynamics kind of start going on. We had seen that the house did not look like it did before, but that the father's an architect and went and did, oddly, the strangest kind of layout for a house that I've seen. I'm like, what the fuck? Because there's like an outdoor area in the middle of this like house compound, and it's just like, what the fuck? But we see that the family dynamic has changed, and the kid's like, he's not the center of attention. And I don't really even see the adults try and come to a thing of like, listen, she's a small baby and can't really do a lot of stuff on her own. They just almost pretty much assume, oh, you gotta figure that this kid can't do anything. He's barely out of that phase to begin with. And he starts like messing with her and everything, hits her at one point, and they don't explain why you shouldn't hit her. They just say you don't hit her. They also put on the thing of like, oh, this is your sister, you gotta protect her and everything like that. I'm like, you kind of have to watch out how you phrase that kind of stuff, because yes, brothers and sisters should look out for each other, but you also have to add the caveat of sometimes if a motherfucker's gonna do something stupid, you gotta let that motherfucker do that stupid thing to learn not to do it again, or they're gonna keep doing that stupid thing. You know what I mean? Granted, that doesn't completely pop up, but that's just kind of like a thing like, what? And we see that the mother and father dynamics are just kind of fucked. Because she wants to spend time with the kids, but also do this stuff with her career. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, that he's going to be at home and pretty much do freelance and try and take care of everything. When evidently, when it was with Kun, she stayed home and pretty much did all the kind of housework and stuff like that and dealt with the kid. And they just kind of have unreasonable expectations and are kind of dickish towards each other, in my opinion. They don't really kind of deal with it. Like, the dad just kind of accepts it and like, yeah, okay, right, trying to figure out what to do, and the mom just kind of goes, she becomes kind of like the angry character. It's really kind of weird because she's trying to deal with everything, and she usually is pretty much the kind of bad guy to Kun, where the dad, barring the instances with the like bike and everything that pop up, is kind of never on the kind of like same level. He calls her like a witch and shit like that, but she never kind of like sits down to try and talk to him about it. they kind of just treat him as a little autonomous kind of. They fucking treat him kind of almost like the dog to a degree that they got to interact with more. I bring up the dog because they've gotten the dog before, and it's really kind of weird now that I've said that because I didn't think about that before. Because the dog could kind of handle itself once, of course, a kid kind of came into the picture, but a kid's kind of different. That's brought up because at some point, while this is going on and he's trying to figure out what's going on with Mirai and all that, he goes outside to the tree, does a magical thing, and he's talking to the human form of the dog. I knew what was going on. Like, okay, cool. Why is this happening? I don't fucking know. But he runs around as the dog, tries to figure out, and it gets into the dog's head. It's like, hey, he kind of doesn't like the food that you got because you used to get better shit before me. And they do kind of change it up, but that's about it. There's no kind of moral thing learned of, hey, you're kind of putting less attention on the dog and it knows. Which is like you're putting less attention on Coon and he knows. And the thing is, if you explain this shit or try and get onto his level and try and figure out what's going on in his head, a lot of this stuff could have been like changed. And the thing is, nobody really kind of fucking changes here. Because then more kind of time traveling stuff comes on. We see that the grandparents come in and pretty much just all want to focus in on the new baby. I'm like, yeah, you're being a dicks. Granted, the kid's like, hey, look at me. And see, the thing is, I guess I kind of identify more with Coon because I'm the older sibling and kind of understand that, but I don't have as big as an age difference that I did to, like, my sibling. It's just how it's shown really shows more of his thing, and Mira's like, I just don't give a fuck about what's going on. What the fuck are you messing with my ass kind of shit. But, of course, we've got these, like, dolls for Girls' Day, and then if it's not put away after the kind of holiday thing, whatever, at the end of that day, every day it's out supposed to add a year to the time that the girl's supposed to get married. And then we see that Mirai from the future, who's like middle school version, has to get Kun to try and help her put those away, and that sequence was just like, what? Okay. I really didn't care. I'm like, okay, she's like, what if I, she was kind of like, I understand the whole kind of concept and trying to do this stuff with superstition, but you're showing that Mirai is kind of just as kind of self-centered and you're like, hey, we kind of got to do this so that way I can not have to wait a year and everything, and then is pretty much trying to enlist the help of her very small brother and trying to keep herself changed from the dad. There's like, you could have been like, Kun, go to dad and tell him to put that shit away. Annoy the fucking shit out of him. You are at that age where you could fucking annoy the fucking fuckballs out of someone. And then be like, doll, now, mama told you, bitch, do it. Bitch, do it. But no, we get this weird sequence where we got the not adult, but like middle school aged Mirai and the human form of the dog pretty much trying to put the thing away. I understand that it was trying to go for humor. It wasn't for me. You know what I mean? I didn't find it funny, so I found this whole thing kind of boring. Is it completely and utterly horrible? No, the animation is good, and I can understand what they're trying to attempt, but I just didn't like the execution of what was going on. They eventually get it away, and talking about like the B game and all that kind of stuff, but eventually he keeps being a kid and pretty much doing messes and stuff. The mom's pretty much ragging his ass for it, and saying that she'll like throw away all his toys and not buy him any new toys again. Thus, of course, prompting the whole thing of him going completely nutso butso. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what happens when you kind of ultimatum a motherfucker without kind of explaining why he needs to pick up his toys. You just tell him to pick up his toys. It's like, no, so that way we don't step on them, we don't break them, we know where they're at, and we make sure that it's clean and that nobody can, like, get fucked up or hurt or whatnot. No, she just fucking yells the shit. He, of course, goes crazy. Tree goes, hey, guess what? Pulls him back to a time where he, like, hangs out with his pretty much similar age mom, because he'd seen pictures, and evidently her and her brother, who's like a year younger, they didn't, since they had a shorter span apart, they didn't really get nutso, but she's like she was just as self-centered as Kun because she was the older sibling and wanted to do all this stuff and wanted a cat and all that. That's mainly important to the picture, but other than that, it's like, what? They go in, and she's evidently been trying to pretty much get this cat thing, which eventually leads to Kun doing the whole bite thing. He then starts going. They like go through the house, they're playing and everything in her house. They make this whole giant kind of mess, and then of course her mother comes in, which is his grandmother. She puts him out of the house real quick, and then we start hearing the whole thing of her being yelled at, the grandmother using the same kind of language that the mother's using to Kun, and just showing the repeating of those kind of cycles of shit that happen. And I'm like, yeah, you have to watch out that you don't do the same things that your parents did if they don't work or they make you do weird kind of things. Granted, there's good things that parents do, yeah, but in this instance, we're seeing just the repeat of cycles of things that are just getting completely nuts. And it's like, okay, so you didn't get this and you didn't get that, and then you kind of start doing the same kind of stuff. You talk at your kid, not with them. Of course, Kun understands and sees his mother asleep with Mirai, kind of crying, and he kind of like pats her head and everything. Just like, all right, cool. And then he gets on the kick of wanting the bike. He gets the bike. He wants to ride it around the park and everything. His dad takes him but has to deal with the baby. And he wants to ride with the kids, but he doesn't want to use his training wheels and keeps falling down and everything like that. He makes a bitch fit that he doesn't want to go back and everything. And his dad's trying to say, like, no, you can go back and do it and learn and everything like that. It's no big deal. And he doesn't explain to him, like, what he had to go through as a kid. You learn that later on. So we see then he gets sucked into the tree again, and this time is with his great grandpa, but he doesn't learn that till later. And we just see that the great grandpa takes him horseback riding and riding on a bike, teaching him, like, yeah, if you can ride one thing, you can pretty much ride anything. Okay. Then he goes and he keeps falling down and everything and is able to ride a bike. I understand what they're trying to convey. It's just like, oh, okay. These things that like Kun learns don't really kind of stick. Granted, they're kind of understandable as a kid, but like he's a very static character that just, I mean, he gets a little bit, and he kind of gets some kind of change towards the end, but it's almost like vignettes trying to be connected, and then it just is like, okay, because one doesn't really influence another. We get them influencing the certain kind of events, but you don't see the long form kind of change. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Mm. But he then learns that that's his great grandpa and that he died like about a year or so ago, and talking about like how he won a foot race against his great grandma, and that's how they got married and stuff like that. It's like, okay. Mm. Then we get towards the kind of end of the movie, and we see that he's pitching a bitch because he wants his yellow pants because they're going to go on a vacation, but they're in the dryer and all that, and he doesn't want to go and tries to hide, and then gets sucked into the future, and we see his kind of older self who's pretty much still kind of an ass. He calls him kind of a brat and has an awful attitude and to go on the thing, but he just seems like a standoffish dick. Especially more so when we see him interacting with their present version of Mirai in the future. Ugh. I don't know why this whole kind of future thing starts popping up or why it even starts occurring. It's really weird until you get to the end and you're like, okay, it's an index, but why the fuck is it like doing anything? So he gets on a train. He's like, don't get on that train. Of course, kid goes off, goes on the train. It's supposedly futuristic Tokyo. And he sees all these people finding lost children and everything, goes to the lost and found. It's not even really explained why this thing knows that he's got a pet. He can't tell his mom's name or his dad's name because it's really kind of weird. You'd think that at around that age, you'd be like, okay, I'm mommy, that's daddy, but if you ever get separated from us, last names are this, or something like that. You know what I mean? I think especially since they would go into kind of like higher areas or whatnot, but he doesn't know and pretty much is going to get sent on a train to the lonely place, kind of like hell, because he gets sucked in there and he sees the things. He's like, no, and he's like, like, how old have you lost? Myself or whatnot. What's your last name? And it's like, do you know any kind of other relative? And then for some reason, Mirai pops up and he stops her from getting sucked into the train. And then future Mirai takes him out pretty much and tells him that the oak tree is pretty much an index of their family history. We see that the dog was saying goodbye to his mom. I'm like, okay. We see their dad riding a bike, but he'd always been kind of sickly and, well, he'd always been kind of weak and he couldn't even ride one in elementary school and everything. He just kept trying and trying. We see the great grandfather injured, swimming out and then doing the foot race where the grandmother pretty much, great grandmother pretty much let him win and all that, saying like all these little moments, if they didn't happen, we wouldn't exist and all that kind of stuff. All right, fine, cool, whatever. They eventually pop up to the point where they're in the present, which is Mirai's, which is the future for Kun. He's like, no, you're the best one here. Pretty much Kun's still a dick shit to Mirai, and then pops back into the present, and we see that the dryer pops out the yellow ones. He makes to like try and put them on, but he then just goes with the blue and goes. And the parents are pretty much trying to assuage themselves that they're good parents. Now, granted, I'm not trying to be like overly critical on these people because I understand that parenting is hard. All right, but it's almost to a point of like you chose to have children. You choose to try and figure out how to juggle these kind of things. There are going to be motherfucking trade-offs. If you want a career, you will see your children less because there's only so much time. If you're going to try and balance that, you're going to have a society where it's like, hey, devote all of yourself to the fucking company. Granted, I understand there's a societal kind of thing in that. And she's dealing with that because she's been pretty much the caregiver at one point and now kind of pretty much the primary breadwinner is what it's pretty much set to be, which I don't mind which one you take or whatnot, but I'm like, you're going to have trade-offs if you're going to be the one primarily out all the time, doing all these six things, doing all the business trip stuff, pretty much trying to see if she's a good mother and everything, and the dude being, the husband being like, yeah, you're a good mother and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, but you're doing the same thing that your mother did to you, to your son, and none of you are explaining kind of the dynamic change that's going on. You just fucking think the kid's gonna get it. Now, granted, that might not be important to the story, but I don't know. I'm like, you're trying to see that this kid tries to grow as a story, but I don't really see it. I mean, I see him do these things. I see him kind of learn the lesson, but you don't see the kind of payoff of that being completely integrated into his whole being. Because the end goal being that we see him in the future, he's just a snarky little butt munch. And especially to his sister, I'm like, if everything like here is supposed to show that he's supposed to learn things and get along better with his sister, it kind of really doesn't. I understand that there can be like, oh, he's being a snarky, kind of sarcastic kind of thing to Mirai, and the thing is, we're not really shown that. If we're not shown it, you gotta show, you just can't tell. And granted, you gotta balance that kind of stuff out. But in here, it's like, from what we've shown, Kun really isn't that much better in the future. Now, granted, we only see him a little bit, and we see Mirai future self more, but it's like, I don't know what the whole kind of messaging of this whole thing was. And I don't know. If someone can enlighten me, cool. That's cool. That's pretty much why I do these kinds of things. But I'm like, okay, these are little vignettes. Kun's trying to learn these kind of lessons, but you don't see the kind of complete integration of the lessons. You do see him understand his mother, but that doesn't lead to him being any less of a hellion to them. It's like, okay, we do see him gain confidence and stuff with the bike, but that doesn't translate to any kind of place where he shows that confidence from what he's learned there. It's like, okay, cool. He learned how to ride a bike, and he learned it from his great-grandpa and all that kind of stuff. His dad's really kind of proud of him. It's like, yeah, he's proud that he thinks he was part of it, but you find that it really kind of isn't. It's kind of really weird. I'm just, okay, I understand the trying to do the message of like all these different kind of things, but I just didn't see it really well executed enough to have a kind of final message. You get all these kind of little things. It's like, oh, do this, 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 and this. But it doesn't kind of come, that's the thing. It doesn't get executed to the point where it completely comes together to where you're like, okay, here you go. You kind of get to the end of the movie and it's just, you see the last part of the last vignette of him accepting to wear the blue pants. I don't know. It just, granted, it was beautiful. Voice acting was good and everything. I just didn't really like the characters. I didn't care about the characters. I mean, I could identify them with a certain extent, but it didn't draw me into the story whatsoever. And I just think that the structure and the overall understanding of what's going on, especially with the tree and the magic, I'm like, why would it activate? That's the basic kind of premise. I'm like, okay, evidently, for some odd, inexplicable reason, at this point in time, all the rest of the different kind of branches of this family tree, past, present, and future, can somehow interact with each other. To just show this kid certain kind of lessons that don't completely come together? I don't know. I don't think it's a bad film. Other people can like it. I wouldn't recommend people staying away from it. I'm just like, it's not my kind of thing. Yeah. So, those are my opinions on the movie. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.